You're watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture.
Well, the entire Jewish world, and really all men and women of conscience, all of us, are rejoicing with the family of Gilad Shalit, now that the Israeli soldier has returned home after 5 tortuous years. And I don't think there's a parent or wife or child anywhere who does not understand and sympathize with the pain the family has endured and identify with the joy that accompanies the safe return of Gilad Shalit. But life is rarely simple. So often life is not made up of black and white, but all shades of gray. And in this instance, the Israeli government has chosen to pay an enormous price to secure one soldier's return, as more than 1,000 Palestinian terrorists have been released from Israeli prisons, some of whom were responsible for heinous, indescribable murder and carnage inflicted on Israeli children, women, and men. How do the Israeli people feel now about Israel's decision to release more than 1,000 terrorists for Gilad Shalit's return? How do Israelis view the complex issues that surround this prisoner swap? Well, for some reaction, we're pleased to have on our phones right now from Israel a former lieutenant colonel in the Israeli Defense Forces, David Roz, who served in virtually every major Israeli military operation since the 1967 Six-Day War, even before that, including the 73 Yom Kippur War, the war in Lebanon in '82, and after leading combat divisions for many years, David Roz served for many more years in the IDF in its intelligence division. And David, it is wonderful to talk to you again. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
By the way, David, I hope you had a wonderful holidays and that the new year promises to be one of health and fulfillment for you and your entire family.
So we all hope.
So, David, I first want to ask you to simply describe for us the mood in the street. What was the mood that the Israeli people experienced when Gilad Shalit finally returned home?
Well, these were great and exciting, emotional moments. I think, if you ask my opinion, I think every person in Israel rejoiced together with the family the return of Gilad. I think there wasn't any division in the rejoicing and in seeing Gilad emerge from the door of the plane, or maybe before that, seeing him alive in the Egyptian television. So I think it was a common feeling among all Israelis. But I think all Israel, I'm sure. I mean, this was almost like Independence Day.
Mm-hmm. All right, now talk to me about the complex issues. And I will tell you what I have heard, David, and I do not suggest that there is a monolithic view among the Israeli people, but I do want to have your sense from people you talk to and from what you understand. And again, you have a large circle from which you draw your own perceptions. But there is always the balance in any situation like this, David, between the personal, individual, family good and the larger social good. And many people have said to me, you know, publicly I will only express joy about Gilad's return. But privately, I, meaning the Israelis I've spoken with, have also concerns about what this says about public policy as a whole. So I want to ask you, how do you believe Israelis feel in general about trading so many Palestinian terrorists, many of whom were guilty of very heinous murders, for one Israeli soldier?
As you mentioned, and I will say that in public, what's important now is after the rejoicing and the excitement and so on, we need to get back to real life. And real life means that there will be a lot of questions to ask after we see Gilad back at home. Look, in the end of the day, first of all, I think this is the headline. When we, as commanders or as leaders, send a soldier to war, we are expected to take care of him and to return him back home, no matter what, in what situation, in what condition, and in what price. Now, from there, the things become much more complicated.
Yes.
We'll have to ask ourselves: did we do all in our ability to find a way to get him back militarily? My belief is that the reason we went into this deal is that we exhausted all other means and other ways. But along the way, and along these 5 years, especially in the first 2 years of Gilad being a prisoner, or maybe even the first few months when we went out to Iron-led operation, did we do everything we could at that time? Such as, for instance, we were in the Gaza Strip. We could have brought some hostages back here to negotiate with Hamas. Did we think about it? Did we do it? I don't have the answers, but I'm just raising questions. Are we going to use this opportunity of getting a deal with the Hamas going, and it was a very complicated one as far as I understand? Will we take an opportunity to go a few steps forward? What are we going to do with the Palestinian Authority? I mean, we diminished in many ways Abu Mazen's status within the Palestinian people. Or what are we going to do about that? Are we going to what are we going to do about our deterrence? I mean, we have to admit that in the end of the day, after bringing back Gilad, that Israel has lost quite a lot of its deterrence. How do we get it back? How do you make it clear to the Hamas and to all other people who want to harm us that we are still strong and determined? I mean, these are type of the questions that I think will be asked, and we'll have to deal with the price and what do we do in similar situations which can occur in the future. What do we do?
Does Israel make a mistake if they ever negotiate with terrorists? America has sometimes taken the position, we will never negotiate with terrorists. David, is that realistic? You know,
we can have principles, and we can have theoretical declarations and whatever, which are important and which are good. But we must show on the ground to every one of our people, and I think that's what differs Israel and the Jewish people from every other nation. I mean, we showed and we gave an example that in the end of the day, that's what makes us so special. That we will pay any price, even if it's painful. And look, obviously it's difficult to look in the eyes of the families that had casualties and that parts of their families were murdered by these people. I mean, I don't want to use very extreme words, but a murderer is a murderer. So that what differs us from anybody else. We'll do everything that we can, even if we have to crawl in front of the enemy. I'm exaggerating, of course. I think at the end of the day, we might have lost the battle for the price that we paid. But I think that in the long run, and maybe even immediately, I think we won the war. There's no doubt about it, because for people with such values and such a moral stand, nobody can overcome us. But in the end of the day, Mark, I must say that, you know, all these are theories, these are questions, there might be some answers, but when you have to bring back a soldier, all this minimizes and diminishes as for the task of bringing him back safely home.
It's interesting, David, but I get chills as you say what you just said, and you've anticipated something I was going to say later. You know, you used the exact right word. This is all theory, and at the same time, there was a living, breathing family and human being that the Jewish tradition sort of tells us we want to do everything we can to bring this person back.
In that respect, I commend our government and our Prime Minister, which I might differ in my many other opinions for his policy or his leadership skills and so on. But in this case, no doubt we did, and I think it wasn't only his decision. I think it was backed by the nation. That what made it so easy for him. Well, not easy. What made him be able to come to this very difficult decision.
David, what will this mean for Netanyahu politically? And do you think some of his political enemies will find a way to use this against him?
We say in Hebrew, "Katonti milomar." I'm small and humble to try and predict Bibi's, Mr. Netanyahu's future. Look, in the short run, obviously he gained a lot of points. No doubt that his political opponents, when the dust will set, will use the opportunity to remind him what price he paid. And, it's easy for someone who doesn't have to make the decision to criticize and whatever. And I think the big test, that's my personal opinion, which I'm very consistent about, is what and how will we use this opportunity? Because I really see it as an opportunity, maybe a very vague one, for the day after. If from here there'll be a movement, an innovative movement, and at least expressing goodwill and backing it with action, then I think he will gain many more points. If not, only the future will tell. But as you know, in Israel, what happened this morning is old news in the afternoon.
Yes.
So we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, okay, but I want to push you a little bit.
Push.
What are you suggesting might come of this that would please you? What is the potential good on a larger scale beyond the Gilad Shalit family? What is the good that could come out of this, David?
I would expect to use this opportunity to push forward and be practical and not to only use rhetoric, but to do action, which means to find innovative ways to get closer to an opening for resuming negotiations. I am not afraid of dealing with the Hamas and talking to the Hamas. I think in the end, I would prefer the Palestinian Authority to be in the lead. We should do everything that we can to help that happen. But I think we have to take initiative. I think we should lead the way and push forward, not wait to react, but to be the ones to take the initiative and to move forward.
Are you suggesting in any way that the fact that Hamas would finally make this deal for Gilad Shalit, in some way this suggests a softening on their part?
I don't know. I detect some change in the will to negotiate. I think from what I read and from what I heard from interviews or semi-interviews with a negotiator, I think there were signs that the Hamas can be practical too. And from being practical, and if you found the right way to address such an organization, we hated the guts of the Palestinian Authority or the PLO for many, many years. We refused to negotiate with them. We didn't speak to them. We saw them as top enemies. We hated Arafat, which I think he deserved our hate. I won't shed one tear for him. But on the other hand, we changed our policies, and that's leadership. Mm-hmm. When we found an opportunity We tested it, right? We failed several times. We got a blow in our face once and again. But in the end of the day, you have to make peace with your enemies, not with your friends.
Incidentally, David, do you have any idea why this swap happened now? Because at one point, Hamas, my understanding is, did offer to swap Gilad Shalit for 1,000 prisoners, and the Israeli government turned it down. And at one point, I believe the trade would have even cost fewer terrorists in prison. Why now did this happen?
The new mediator, the Israeli mediator, David Roz, he detected an opportunity, which, because again, you know, there's the changes happened in the region in the last few months. Mm-hmm. And I think in the end of the day, Hamas leadership, although it's also split between the military arm and the political arm, I think they realize that they can't keep the situation in stalemate, and they should also try and find a way to be more flexible. And there were some new people who got involved in the like the mediator, who got involved and had some innovative ways, and I think also an ability, personal ability to read the minds and to get through to the hearts. And for what I understand, that the negotiations were very tough in Egypt, but at the same time, they managed to find a way to have trust in each other. I think all these things together, the changing mood of the Middle East, understanding that you need to find new partners. Well, I don't think Hamas saw Israel as a partner, but for them, seeing the problems, the pressure that's put on Syria, and the headquarters, at least the political headquarters are in Syria. So now maybe they have to try and find some other solution. I think each side wanted to find a solution. And look, there was a growing pressure from the Israeli public on the government to find a solution. And I think Netanyahu, maybe a little late in the day. Well, it wasn't too late because Gilad is back home. We'll have to still see how he's going to recuperate. But I think he understood that there was no other alternative. He might have tried some other ways, but he ended up in the same situation as the previous governments. And here he made a leadership decision.
Mm-hmm. In America, we read that Egypt was instrumental in this swap deal. And it's interesting that on the one hand, we keep reading that the relationship between Israel and Egypt seems to be deteriorating. And we had the incident at the Israeli embassy in Cairo.
Right.
And yet at the same time, Israel seems to give a great deal of credit to Egypt for this deal. In general, how do you feel at the moment yourself about Israeli-Egyptian relations?
I think the Egyptians, in the end of the day, understood that the incident in the embassy in Cairo wasn't going to do them much good. Not internally, because that means that they cannot control their own people, and they cannot provide the safety that a regime needs to provide to their country. I think they understood that this will harm their relations with the United States, and they can't afford it. This is the opportunity to take leadership in the Arab world. By the way, there are a lot of rumors that Turkey wanted to come in and assist too. And Israel decided that we'll gamble on Egypt, which was the right gamble. I mean, I don't know if it was a gamble. I think it was a calculated risk, and it proved itself. Mm-hmm. And the Egyptians, I think, gained points for their own sake internally and externally, especially with the United States. And they proved that after the incidents in the Israeli embassy where they had no control, or maybe they didn't want to have control, they still are a player, and that will give them a boost. I'm sure that was part of the considerations, and whatever happened, the result is that Gilad is back home, and that's the most important thing.
I want to come back one more time
Yep.
to your role as, in essence, a commander of other troops, your long career as a soldier. And I want you to know that we have seen in America all kinds of blogs and internet releases that raise the question, will this release of 1,000 Palestinian, more than 1,000 Palestinian terrorists, not only perhaps lead to other Israeli deaths if these terrorists go back to terrorist activity, and will this not only encourage Hamas and other groups to capture other Israelis in an effort to win the kind of release that we see in this swap, and that therefore, as tragic as it is, it puts in harm's way more Israeli civilians and other Israeli soldiers for the safe return of one Israeli soldier. And you, as a commander, have always tried to communicate to your troops that yes, Israel never leaves an Israeli soldier behind. But the question that we see being raised is there at some point a price which an Israeli soldier must understand he may have to pay? And so these are the reasons why some people are saying, of course we wanted to save Gilad Shalit. Of course this was a breathing, living human being. But the price we paid is one not only that in some way takes the justice away from those who have suffered at the hand of terrorists already, but it puts into jeopardy other Israeli soldiers at such a large number that someone like yourself, a commander, has to at some point say, an Israeli soldier sometimes must sacrifice his life for the greater good.
As Jews and as commanders, the value of life is more important than anything else.
Yes.
And I'll just quote from my memory what the head of the Israeli Mossad, Mr. Fardo, said in the government meeting when he was asked for his opinion. And he said he said two things. Israel is strong enough to release 1,000 prisoners, and he said, us as commanders, we send soldiers to all kinds of operations, secret, covert, war, whatever, and we are expected to do everything to return them back home. I think that's the top answer. Mm-hmm. That's the top line and the bottom line. Now, no doubt this is a very heavy price. But at this moment, while we are speaking, I am sure that the willpower hasn't weakened among the Hamas to kidnap more Israelis. And we'll have to address this situation. And I don't know what will happen tomorrow. And look, when these 1,000 prisoners were in Israeli prisons, did the Hamas stop doing any terrorist actions? All kinds, all sorts, known and unknown. So one more prisoner released or one less, that doesn't make a difference. And even if all of them peacefully go back home, which hopefully they do, I think they are human beings like me and you, and they would like to spend time with the family. But let's assume that all of them don't do any action. They'll have a replacement. And if all of them do come back to combat, there are thousands of Hamas soldiers. Well, not soldiers. I don't think they're soldiers. A soldier doesn't allow not to give contact with a prisoner for 5 years, not to show a sign or not to accept glasses, optical glasses, because they broke his glasses when he was kidnapped. So there are thousands of terrorists in Gaza that can and do terrorist actions all the time. So that's another 200. Another will come back. I think we can deal with it if we need to, and hopefully we'll have to build up our deterrence in a way that they'll think twice, three times, And as you know, in the end of the day, only a political solution will solve the problem, not a military one.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end of the day, if you ask me as David Roz, I repeatedly, and I think every Israeli commander repeatedly says to his soldiers, you must know that if we go out to war, we have a responsibility to win the war. And that means that maybe we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, have we, when we go out to war, do we stop and think of every casualty? And I think that was one of the problems in the Second Lebanese War and in other operations, that we put too much emphasis while in combat. What will happen to us if we have a high number of casualties? These are considerations that we have to take in war, but when you go out to action, you have to forget about it for a while. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, I would say to our soldiers and repeatedly say to them and train them and educate them that you don't leave a wounded soldier, nevertheless, a killed soldier in the battlefield, you'll bring him home, and mainly to bring them home safely and win the war, of course.
It is one of the things that makes not only Israel special, but it gives an enormous sense of pride to world Jewry that the attitude we have is the one that you expressed, and that I agree with you. For all of the intellectual and real complex issues that surround this swap, Israel did the right thing, and Israel did the noble thing and the humane thing, and in a very real way, the most Jewish thing. And you express in so many ways the best of the Jewish tradition and the state of Israel. And it is always wonderful to have the opportunity to talk to you. And I hope you'll permit us to continue to call upon you whenever there's an issue that I feel you can in some way enlighten us on. And I only wish you now, as we begin the new year together, a wonderful, wonderful, successful, fulfilling 5772, and that it's a year in which we get to see each other very often.
That will be my expectation, and let's hope that these wishes come true. And I wish you and, of course, all the listeners and the viewers Happy New Year. We are starting a new year, and I think it's a good start. Let's just hope that we'll take the tide and change it.
Thank you very, very much, David. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Be well.
Lehitraot.
Lehitraot. And those are the thoughts of retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Israeli Defense Forces, David Roz. I hope you enjoyed hearing his perspective on the dramatic events and complicated issues surrounding the prisoner swap for Gilad Shalit. By the way, David Roz is now one of Israel's premier tour guides. And if you have any plans to visit Israel, either on your own or with a group, and you'd like to travel with David Roz, you can reach him through his email address at rd4633@gmail.com. Of course, as always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to the ideas expressed by David Roz. How do you feel about the Gilad Shalit swap for more than 1,000 Palestinian terrorists? Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who can send a tax-deductible contribution of $36 or more to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media to help support our programming. Tax-deductible checks may be made out to GEM and mailed to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. Please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD, and we thank you for your kind support.